Okay, we're going to talk about restricted domains of functions. So we talked about functions with our radical functions, that we had a restricted domain. So if I have f of x is equal to the square root of x, not every value of x is available for the domain. For example, if I want to find f of negative 4, that's going to give me the square root of negative 4, and f of negative 4 is equal to plus or minus 2i, which we're not going to graph. So we can only have values that are positive underneath the radical. So for this function here, x has to be greater than or equal to 0. So here is my function, f of x is equal to the square root of x, and it shows that I have a restricted domain because not every x value is being used. My x's can go from 0 to positive infinity, or I can say that x is greater than or equal to 0. Both these represent my domain. So our next unit, we're going to look at rational functions. A rational function is a division of two polynomials. So this is a graph of f of x is equal to 1 over x. And you can see that we have restricted domain and we have restricted range. So my graph is not able to cross the x-axis. It levels up on the left before it hits the x-axis, and then on the right before it hits the x-axis. I also have a vertical asymptote on the y-axis. It levels off on the left before it hits the x-axis and on the right before it hits the x-axis. So it jumps on either side. So we will have two asymptotes for this rational function. Some rational functions have one asymptote, some have two, some have three, some have four. There's really no limit to how many vertical asymptotes or horizontal asymptotes we can have. It just depends on the function. So we find vertical asymptotes using the domain. What are we not allowed to have in the denominator of any fraction? So we're not ever allowed to have what number in the denominator of a fraction?
0.
0. That is correct. Oops. So we cannot have 1 over 0. This is undefined. So in my last function, it was f of x is equal to 1 over x. If I put 0 as my x value, it would give me 0 in the denominator. So for this function, x cannot equal 0. So if this is my rational function, I'll have a vertical asymptote when I have 0 in the denominator. So what value of x will give me 0 in the denominator? So I'm going to take the whole denominator and set it equal to 0. Solve for x. So x equals negative 3 will give me 0 in the denominator. So I can say that x cannot equal negative 3. This negative 3 for my x value is a vertical asymptote. So let's recap. How do we find vertical asymptotes of rational functions? They're the values that give you 0 in the denominator. So we take our rational function. Alright, so I take any rational function. So I wrote my general rational function is f of x equals 1 over q of x. I take the denominator, q of x, whatever that polynomial function is, I set it equal to 0, and then I solve for x. This will give us our vertical asymptote. Thanks for watching.